Hey, what is going on everyone? Welcome back to the Fire Emblem 3 Houses, Blue Lions, Maddening Mode, low turn count playthrough. I'm Mekkah, I'm not playing, I'm just commentating, but I hope you have a good time anyway. So before we get into actual Chapter 3, which we're going to be playing this video, I want to get into the team changes that has been happening over the last month basically. Because there's been a lot of monastery management that I think it would be a shame not to include it in some shape or fashion. It's a pretty boring part of 3 Houses sometimes, but for a low turn count playthrough, I really think the insane amount of planning that goes into it needs to be highlighted. So I'm going to go over a couple of unit changes that have been happening over the last month. So first of all, we have a new unit in our army. Her name is Lysithea, and she was recruited from the Golden Deer. It's the first cross-house recruitment that we've done. Lysithea was recruited in week 1 of Chapter 3 to reduce the burden of faith tutoring, because she wants to be reaching B faith for warp by Chapter 5. She's the most well-known and the best warp user in the game. And the way we recruited her is we got a B support with Byleth, and that gives her a chance to join you in any given week that you have to be support for. We rigged that to be week 1, so that we had a lot of time to give her faith rank basically. In this chapter, she's mostly just training for self-improvement, and she's useful for fighting armor knights sometimes and doing chip damage and all that. But for the most part, she's not going to one-round a whole lot other than that. But she is important to raise up to level 20 for a bishop promotion at some point, so we can get 2 warps instead of 1, thanks to white magic uses ×2. Or faith magic, whatever you want to call it. Another new face is Marianne. She's in this mission as a mission assist. This is not quite recruiting her, although it helps with recruiting her later on. She's basically an controllable NPC, controllable green unit. It gives us a second physic user to work with, better range and better healing than Mercedes. The funny thing about Marianne is that she reaches physic level sooner than Mercedes does, because she starts with D plus faith rather than Mercedes' D, and you get physic at C. Linhardt would have been another good candidate, but we need to recruit him later for reasons that will become clear in later chapters. He's a pretty good warp user, but we need to get Marianne now and Linhardt later. Marianne's going to be recruited by Chapter 7. Dimitri has been rushed to C Authority so he can use the Knights of Ceres battalion. This one is C rank. I believe it's the only C rank battalion that you have, or at least one of the few ones. And it's nice to have one person, because that means we have access to the Blaze Gambit, which is a 1-use Gambit. Most Gambits that we have at this point have 2 uses. Blaze only has 1, but it's very useful because it freezes a large amount of enemies in a very wide range. There's a very wide area of effect. And Dimitri wants to be rushing Authority anyway, because we want to get Battalion Wrath and Battalion Vantage on him for the broken combo later on. He's also going to need Battalion Wrath for the next map. Dimitri, despite what you might think about like his lance focus, he's going to be focusing on training bows instead. Right now he has D bows, which means he has access to the mini bow, the steel bow, and curved shot. And archer is nicer for him than cavalier right now. Sometimes sea lances is nice for him, like being able to use Knight Leader against the boss here, Lonato. But right now the bow advantages are nicer too. I imagine he's also going to pick up hit plus 20 at some point. But I haven't actually looked ahead in the run, so that's just speculation on my part. The Dew is working on getting B heavy armor for next turn, or next chapter, Chapter 4, because without Smite, which you get from B heavy armor, he's not going to be able to help with a 2-turn there. This comes at the cost of the Dew's like personal development, getting things like Tempest Lance or stuff like that, or Vengeance later on. So we're kind of sacrificing the Dew's long-term utility for just this quick 2-turn next chapter, which is unfortunate, because the Dew actually has potential as a unit. On the Dew, it's probably most noticeable that we've been cooking some food. We actually cooked speed food 4 times using all the bull heads. And the reason we did is because we have some pretty high AS thresholds for this map to reach. And this map is pretty heavy on the enemy density, so getting doubled, pretty bad for our unit survivability. That's why this time we went heavy on the cooking. Doesn't impact our professor level too much. I'm going to get more into that later. It's pretty good for professor level, in fact. But it might be curious to see someone spend like their early professor points on cooking instead of, you know, meal and stuff like that. Pretty curious choice, but in this chapter it really pays off. But it makes someone like the Dew a lot faster than he otherwise would be. He also has weight -3 from C armor, so that gives him much more attack speed than you might be used to. Felix got another big development on his bows. He's at C bows now, which gives him close counter, lets him counter enemies using his bows at 1 range. That bullhead stack that we did gives him a lot of speed, lets him actually double like it's like normal or hard mode. Funnily enough, in order to reach B heavy armor for the Dew, we need to put him in group tasks where he's like, I think they're like cleaning up the monastery or something. And we partnered Felix with him. And that way Felix is actually going to get weight -3 sometimes, which is kind of cute. It doesn't really need to be a thing, but you know, he needed a partner, so why not? Annette, really big rush on Authority. We got her to C plus Authority so that she gets rally speed. Now her rallies are super good. Normally, you wouldn't be able to reach this threshold. We need to actually rig her tutoring sessions to be pretty good. I've been told by Aggro, who routed a lot of these things, like recruiting Lysithia early on, and getting her faith up in time, getting the do up there in time. He routed a lot of these things, and you really need to rig Annette's tutoring. I'm pretty sure you need a couple of perfects in there just to get that. But her rallies, as a result, are super good now. They give +4 strength, +4 speed, and +4 res. Really good, especially for boss killing, but really just anyone who's gonna have a huge enemy phase really appreciates having these buffs. Mercedes has finally reached C Faith for Physic. As I said, it's kind of unfortunate she gets it so late compared to other dedicated healers, but it's still really useful. And Ingrid has been gotten to D-Bows and D-Authority for Curve Chop Chip and some Gambit utility. And she's also got D-Rank Lances for Tempest Lance. So kind of nice that she's got these different things going on, but we might not really use her long term. Because, yeah, our bases in Blue Lions are pretty low. Ash, I don't know if everyone trash talks Ash, he's really, really good. I mean, giving everyone in your armor, almost everyone, +5 move 2 times in a map. Pretty good, if you ask me. Seriously though, that kind of segues into the other thing I wanted to say is from this chapter onward, the battalion guild is open, so you get to buy a lot of new battalions, and as a result you have access to a lot of stronger gambits like the Stride Gambit that you're probably familiar with if you played this game at all, but also a lot of others, so that everyone really should have a battalion at this point, perhaps with the exception of Felix, depends on what your strategy is. The other important point is that our professor level has been rushed to C rank, and this has a couple purposes. Make sure you get a maximum amount of funds. At the start of every month you get a number of gold in this game, and the higher professor level, the more funds you get, so that's really useful. Also increases your activity points and lecture points, which in turn means your units are going to get better weapon levels, and more activity points means you get to build up all these things even faster in the future, so it kind of has a cascading effect to it. You also get adjutants at C professor level. You get 1, I believe, at C rank. We actually make Sylvain an adjutant to Dimitri in this chapter, so we can get some XP without actually having to fight. Sylvain definitely needs to be trained for some Swift Strike utility, and he's also going to get HP +5 just by being an adjutant. But spoon-feeding people kills is pretty hard on Maddening, as you see, and Sylvain is kind of a victim of that, so having him as an adjutant is going to be helpful. That's all the introduction I need to do for this chapter. Still got about 8 minutes of talking, but let's get into the actual chapter itself. Alright, so let's get into the actual chapter. This is going to be a 6-turn clear devised by OCDbox, so thanks to him for that. So, the first Fog of War map in Fire Emblem 3 houses, and thankfully one of the few ones, because Fog of War in this game is really annoying, but we do have a torch on the do to lighten it a little bit. This chapter also introduces Catherine as an NPC, and she's quite a monster. She has the Thunder Brand, which is brave, and it's going to hit every enemy on the map 4 times and just generally destroy them. On Maddening, she really likes to use Fudrian Strike, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Which is a bit worse than just, whacking someone 4 times, but it still just gets the job done. We actually need Catherine and her 2 NPC buddies to connect just about every hit they do, to lighten the load on our own units a little bit. Funnily enough, we have access to the Stride Gambit now, as I've said. +5 move on all characters that you cast it on, which is the unit you cast it on, and then everyone in their 2 range. And that would be pretty powerful to have turn 1 when everyone is close to each other, but instead we choose to hold on to it until turn 2. I believe the reason this is because on turn 2 we can still use it on the units that matter the most, like Byleth for example. But if we just use it on turn 1 and move everyone their full move, like really try to take advantage of it, then we just end up with a bunch of units in danger. And this ends up being this ends up being better. So on this turn we're going to kill the Dark Mages in the center of the map, and doing that unlocks the real boss kill objective. So basically this chapter is a double boss kill. The only thing about the Dark Mage is he's pretty hard to kill, and you want to one-round him, because otherwise he's gonna, be really annoying to you. He's in a forest, and he's pretty hard to hit. Now, Byleth has enough strength to where, with the rally strength from Annette, she can 3-shot him with the gauntlets, which means she can miss 1, but it's still proving pretty difficult to hit the guy. So what we have to do is use some Divine Pulses to make sure we can get through. We have 3 total, and we do have means to quote-unquote RNG abuse. What we're really doing is we're just taking actions we would already take, and try to see if a different order makes everything work out. The first attempt had Ingrid miss a Gambit on a guy that she also needs to hit, so we Divine Pulsed again, and now we're going for an attack with Lysithia instead. I think I've already mentioned this, but Lysithia does want to get kills whenever possible, because she does need to get level ups, and healing alone is not going to suffice if you want to actually level her up all the way to Bishop in a low turn count setting. Ingrid freezes a guy, actually pulls him towards us with Assembly, but the most important thing about that guy is that he just stays still, so he doesn't harass our more frail units. And then we can get another attempt in with Byleth, and miss again, yay! So killing that guy is important, because it also clears up the fog, which you know, gives us more of an idea of what's going on. But if you don't do it, Donato actually doesn't appear. I had a race with a friend once where he didn't know he had to do that. He went all the way to the upper left of the map, and then turns out the guy wasn't actually there. Had to go back all the way to find the Dark Mage. Really big pain. Of course, an LTC player is going to know that this guy is necessary to kill the boss. But yeah, there we go. This time he actually died. Took us a while. And that clears up the fog and gives us an idea what's going on. You get a cool cutscene with Catherine. And now Donato actually appears with a bunch of extra enemies, so we have to be very careful to make sure our units survive. That is actually the main reason that we cannot get a 5-turn clear on hard mode. Maddening Mode sacrifices a turn here because it's just not possible for our units to, you know, have the offense and the defense required to survive everything. If you think you can prove us wrong, go ahead. But right now we think that 6th turn is the minimum clear on Golden Deer Maddening. So from here we have most of the offense being carried by Byleth and Dimitri. Normally they wouldn't be able to, you know, double all the enemies they would, but thanks to that +4 speed boost that we got from cooking 4 times in the monastery, with all those poor bullheads, we're fine. Dimitri sets the whole place on fire with that Blaze Gambit. That is his only use, and the way the range works out from most Gambits is usually like a straight line. Things like Assembly, Disturbance, Assault Troop. So Dimitri wants to be in that position that he's in right now, but still freeze those 2 enemies. And for that reason, we need to Blaze Gambit. Not because we need to hit like the 10 enemies you would hit normally with Blaze, or, you know, that high amount. But just because the enemies are in a weird formation where it works out. Here you can see Felix having really good offense right now. I believe he was rallied by Annette this turn, so that also helps. Actually, I think we rallied Bellette this turn. But the point is, everyone has amazing offense. So funnily enough, the green units got hit by Stride as well, and that actually causes one of these guys to just leap forward and attack. These the NPC friends of Catherine will usually follow Catherine around. If there's an enemy in their range, they will attack them, but if there's not anything, they'll just like try to enter turn next to Catherine or follow her around whenever they can. We actually want them to stay alive, so him rushing forward is actually bad for us, and we're going to physic him with Mercedes just to make sure he doesn't die. There is a secret book and a goddess icon at stake for these 2 guys, and we want to have those for Dimitri to increase his liability later on in the chapters, or really for all game long. So having to stay around, I usually consider it a nice bonus when I'm just playing this map casually. I think usually at least one of them dies for me, but for increased reliability for the whole playthrough, it is nice if they stay alive. So the drawback of relying on freezing enemies in order to keep your units alive is that these enemies will usually be around for the next player phase, and you still have to deal with them, but at their full stats. So that is what's going to be the task of our units remaining behind. We are setting up a formation for another Stride next turn. We want to inflict it on Felix, Dimitri, Lysithea, and preferably anyone else we want to get forward, but that is really the main group. So we're setting those up in a way where Ash can reach them next turn with Stride. He didn't do anything last turn, but trust me, Ash's utility is far from over. Stride is a very powerful Gambit. You notice there's a couple of like slightly hesitant looking trades around. I can imagine that playing this map with all the trades that are necessary is pretty daunting overall. I'm imagining that most of the trades that are being done in this map are for the purpose of setting up as many linked attacks as possible, as well as Gambit boosts whenever that's applicable. But this map is less Gambit spamming than Chapter 2 overall. Really the main reason is linked attacks. Really the 4 bullhead spams, the 4 bullheads that we've cooked are really clutch for units like Felix and Dimitri and Byleth for doubling things they normally wouldn't be able to double. It makes units like the Do not get doubled, but those units really get a big improvement on their offense, and as a result the enemy phases are much less daunting than they otherwise would be, because the enemies are actually like almost getting one-rounded sometimes. Now this turn is one of my favorites, because we have positioned most of those units I mentioned, I guess I'll call them like the forward group or the boss killing group, whatever you want to call them, anyway, where they're all in range of the Stride, but there is no single unit in that group that we can actually use Stride on in order to make them all move forward. So we move the Do in a way where Ash can use Stride on him, even though the Do cannot move anymore and cannot profit from the Stride anymore. But this way we're still affecting all these units mentioned to go all the way forward. And I think this is a really cool utility of Stride. Usually you think of Stride as something that you just, use turn 1 and then maybe use somewhere along the way on another couple of units when it's convenient. But this chapter really shows off that you can do a lot more with Stride than what a lot of people think. So now what we got to deal with is a group of enemies near the boss, particularly the 3 enemies with battalions equipped. It's a Myrmidon, I believe an Armor Knight, and a fighter, maybe another soldier. Yeah, it's another soldier. Anyway, the annoying thing about them is you pretty much cannot kill them all on a player phase because there's just too many of them and they start pretty far away from this position. And in addition, if you leave them alive and you put someone in their range, they will spam Gambits on them, and then that unit will probably die because they get their stats lowered, they're frozen in place, so running away with them is harder next turn, if they even survive. In general, just Gambits hit really hard. Now, one great way you can make sure that an enemy does not use a Gambit on you, or at least make it much less likely, is by equipping a bow when you can't counterattack up close range, or in general just unequip someone. Usually enemies will go for normal attacks against units like that. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to entice at least one enemy into making sure we don't get attacked by them with a Gambit. Because you can imagine if someone Gambited, for example, Dimitri in this position, with one of those wide range Gambits. These don't have those, but for example, then other units would be affected as well. So we would have multiple units frozen in place, and we can't have that because within the next couple turns we want to get those units over to Lonato to kill him and end the map. So a lot more complicated trade chains going on to make sure everyone survives. The Cynthia gets the Leather Shield to make that more likely. I don't remember if this is like crucial for her survival. I gotta imagine it is. And Ingrid has actually unlocked Rally Magic at this point to boost the Cynthia's magic a little more. If she does get attacked, which I believe she does by that by guy over there. Nope, it's just a support bidder. Never mind. Dimitri dodges a Gambit, which I imagine is very important to the strategy. Dimitri does have one of the highest charms in the game, so if anyone's going to dodge a Gambit, it's probably going to be him. It's worth noting that some of the enemies on this map are weaker than others. I believe this map has like weaker enemies than Chapter 2, in fact. A lot of them belonging to the militia that people mention occasionally. I believe there's a distinction between Gaspard soldiers and the militia. In that regard, they're representing like, I don't know, a bunch of farmers taking up arms or something. But still, the enemy density in this map is very, very high. So that's why units like Marianne and Mercedes really need to be protected by that. We actually have a sort of an E-rank hammer going on. It's called the Mace, and Ingrid is using it to deal effective damage against an armor knight. Not a weapon I've really used since my first playthrough, but sometimes really niche weapons like this can come in handy sometimes. And I think this is really another example of why LTC players have such a, like, they have a reputation for always using the same strategies, you know, Stride, Warp, Wyvern Lord all game long, but I think this really shows out the creativity that some players have in maps like this. Like, just using the Mace, something that people don't really use very often, I think it really shows off some creativity there. But hey, if you've been using the Mace all along, more credit to you. I'm just saying, never really judge LTC players by, you know, one person just spamming Wyverns, because it's usually a lot more complicated than that. Anyway, we're just killing off these battalion enemies now, and all you have left to deal with is a couple of fighters on Lonato himself. Badath and Dimitri are both in range of Lonato next turn, and Felix is in range as well, because of his longer range than usual. So just a couple of trades to set that up, and we'll be ready to go. Making sure the Iron Shield and the Blue Lion Brooch are in the places they need to be. To this day, I still don't know how to pronounce brutes, and I'm very sorry about that. Everyone else is just kind of engaging in self-improvement and making sure that everyone at the back survives. But at this point, they're so far back from everyone else that there's no point in trying to catch them up to get some scraps off of everyone. It's worth noting, I guess, that there's a couple of enemies at the back that appeared in the forest. I know from experience that those enemies will move towards you if you get in their range, or if you come like within a certain couple tiles of them. But if you stay far enough away from them, they will not notice you and go to you. I usually send someone over there for self-improvement. Sometimes you'll see units spamming Gambits in weird places, like Annette is killing that guy with a Gambit boost. Those kind of Gambits are usually for improving authority rank, because using a Gambit, it doesn't give you weapon XP, but it does give you like a quite significant weapon XP boost in authority, and it can be a way to make sure someone gets to a higher authority rank. I imagine for Annette, for example, she needs to reach the A rank authority for being able to use the Blue Lion Dancers later on, because that's an A rank battalion, and that takes quite a while to get, especially if you're mostly just spamming rallies for most of the map. Anyway, one fighter out of the way, one fighter is dead. Now it's just a matter of making sure everyone has enough health, everyone has done enough self-improvement, and then we can just kill Lonato. And not exactly you just one-round someone, not exactly a boss you could just one-round straight up, but definitely a boss you can take care of if you have units like Blythe and Felix and Dimitri in range combined. We're actually not even using Felix to attack the boss here, we're just having him kill a guy with the mini bow, which to me indicates, hey, it looks like Dimitri and Badath can handle this on their own. And they probably can. Lonato isn't too threatening. I mostly find him scary when he just leaves someone in his Gambit range and he just uses his, I think he has like linked horses or something as his Gambit. But thanks to the bullheads, we can just double him and kill him in 2 rounds using Dimitri and Byleth. And that is going to be this chapter, wrapped up in 6 turns. Pretty neat, if you ask me. Again, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do more introductory segments like this. You can tell they make the video really, really long for, you know, just an LTC. But I think for this month, they were especially important to highlight how much planning has gone into, you know, not just this chapter, but the next few chapters as well. But yeah, Nato is one of those bosses that will suicide on enemy phase, and since we're not in his 1 range, he will suicide by using a javelin against our guys with their bows equipped. So that's going to be the last thing that I need to mention here. We get both stat boosters from the NPC staying alive, and that's it. See you guys around next time for the next chapter. Peace.